Welcome to Powered by Instinct, a podcast for professionals who think about how your fundamental nature drives performance. In each episode, Kolbe experts will interview top performers, team leaders, consultants, and coaches to discuss identifying team members' strengths, aligning those strengths with their jobs, and optimizing individual and team performance. If you're interested in getting more done more naturally, then let's jump in.
Hey, everybody. You get a twofer today on the Powered by Instinct podcast. I'm David Kolbe, CEO visionary of Kolbe Corp. Amy Bruschi, president and integrator here at Kolbe Corp. Good to see you, Amy.
Great to be here. I'm so excited about this topic today.
Yeah, I am too. So the topic today, really, it's a reaction. Gallup did a survey about employee engagement. And the results, well, we can talk about whether we're surprised or what we think about them, but basically the results are saying the trend continues, employee engagement going down. It had been trending up for a number of years, but then starting in 2021, kind of after the pandemic, and I think a little refresher, I think maybe surprising a lot of people, the pandemic actually helped boost employee engagement. I think the widespread theory, and I ascribe to this too, is it was a crisis. People hunkered down. It's that, when you're attacked, you get engaged because we've got to buckle down and survive, get everything done. But then since then, in two successive years, in 2021 and 22, employee engagement has ticked down by 2 percentage points both times. And then this last year, also active disengagement. So, the ones who aren't engaged, that's one thing. They're like, we're not so engaged. Active disengagement, so maybe something like quiet quitting, that's also going up. So 18%, almost a fifth of the workforce is actively checked out of what they're doing.
And sometimes actively disengaged means you're actually sabotaging, like you're negative, you're affecting other people, all that, versus quiet quitting where I'm going to hang back. I'm not going to really, do very much or contribute very much, but active disengagement can look even worse. So that's really, so concerning for anyone in a workplace.
Yeah. And, Amy, we can talk about this here internally. I don't think this is a surprise. I shouldn't say internally. We actually track our employee engagement. It's not going down. We work at it really hard. I will also say that. Engagement Multiplier is actually a vendor that we use that really helps us with that to measure it and to talk to people internally about it to make sure that it stays up. But really what I meant was talking to our clients, hearing that direct information. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, does it surprise you, Amy?
No, actually, it doesn't surprise me at all because we are hearing it from our clients. And frankly, we keep reading about it and everyone's trying to experiment with a bunch of stuff. And clearly, whatever we're thinking would work is not working. And as you're saying, some of that is very situational, but we've had an engagement problem for a long time. It's just leaders are really in pain right now. I think we need to talk about the employees, but I also want to touch base a little bit on leaders because they are burnt out. And the Gallup survey that came out sometime late 2022, I think it was right around October or November, was showing that only 1 in 3 leaders are engaged. So we're talking about the employees,
right?
But now we've got leaders too who can't even be good role models and they themselves are really burnt out. So I think that's compounding what we're seeing.
Yeah. And let me take just a second and talk about a part of this that I think isn't talked about a lot. And sometimes because it isn't talked about, a good chunk of people, but employees, basically not the leaders, get a little cynical, like, oh, employee engagement, who cares? You just want me engaged so that you can make more money off of me and you grind me down. Like, no. It's important, yes, for the company because it's been shown over and over again when you have engaged employees, the company does better and it's more profitable. But it's also for the people in the job, whether they're at a leadership level or at the, kind of team member, employee level, whatever you want to call it. If they're not engaged, their job satisfaction goes down. They don't feel good about what they're doing. Their long-term career development is suffering also because they aren't doing what they need to do and that works both ways. Sometimes one of the reasons they aren't engaged is because they're not getting those opportunities. But it's important for kind of everybody involved for those numbers to be higher. It's not just companies want to do that so they can take advantage of people. That's really not the case. But
no, it affects the rest of your team too. It's not just the short-term pain, it's long-term implications, like you just said, and it's going to affect other people. So it really does have this exponential effect on others.
Yeah. So So let me just cite some of the things that Gallup was talking about when they're measuring employee engagement. So some of the things that went down: clarity of expectations on the job, connection to the mission and purpose of the company, opportunities to learn and grow, opportunities to do what the employees do best, and feeling cared about at work. So those were all factors that went down. And we'll put a link up so that you can look at the article and get more of the details, because they also talk, which of these factors went down in which demographic categories, older versus younger, men versus women, also workplace situation, remote versus in office versus what they call remote ready, but in office, or hybrid also. So yeah, go ahead and read the article, but those are some of the key factors.
What do you think about working remotely versus working in office? Like, what's your thought about how much that really has an effect on some of this right
Yeah.
now?
So the study talked about some differences when they looked at, people in those different scenarios in terms of where they're working and what their satisfaction was. And one of the things that was interesting to me was one of the worst categories in terms of satisfaction and engagement was what they called, as I just mentioned, that remote ready, but fully in office work. So to me, what that's saying is kind of, yeah, these people are in a job they know they could do at least hybrid, if not fully remote. And yet they're stuck in the office all the time. And I think there's a lot of frustration among people who are in that position because, again, the key part is they know from what they do that it doesn't have to be in the office all the time. So they feel like it's really unfair because so many other people get to work remote or hybrid. So I think, that's a factor. But I also think, and the study also showed kind of at the other end of the spectrum, the people who are fully remote are more disconnected. And if you, again, reading through the list
For
here,
sure.
clarity of expectations. If you're not in the office, there's less of an opportunity for you to hear that informal, somebody telling you, or maybe overhearing your conversation and hearing that you don't understand something and saying, oh, I heard you talking about X, and I think, really it should be this different thing. So they're more disconnected also.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
as you said, it was clarity of expectations, connection to the mission and the purpose of the company, and then opportunities to learn and grow. I do worry about people younger in their careers, so early
yep.
in your career in any environment. How do you have opportunities to learn and grow where you're not getting to just observe some of the
Yep.
through osmosis that you get, that some of the learning about how people get things done and solve problems, and you're missing that too.
So this is the Powered by Instinct podcast, though. Let's bring this in
Yeah.
a little bit to conation, how conative factors are playing into this. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, here's the bottom line. People who absolutely love their jobs, and yes, I'm going to use the word love, like love their job, like it's a fit. In order for it to be a fit, has to fit you in all three parts of the mind, which we can talk about in a minute. But those are the people that tend to be more engaged and they want to stick around. So I love this. I love sports analogies, and I think a lot of you have heard before, like being in the zone. When there is a great fit for your role, you're in the zone. It requires less effort. It's the kind of stuff you could do all day. And I do think that, it is important to have the skills and be a good fit for what you just naturally do well. Affectively, or there's got to be a fit with your values. So you got to be connected to the mission of the company and your values and all of that. But this missing piece of it is that the way you naturally solve problems, the way you naturally execute is what's needed in your role, and you're thriving in that. And so there's this missing link that we know it when people pay attention to this, it makes a significant difference in turnover and engagement and all of those things. So it's just long been ignored. So here's what leaders are doing. They are adding back more fun. And just like they were doing before, they're going to
Yep.
have free food and we're going to do all these games. And I do think a lot of that's important for fun and culture and all those kinds of things. But when I'm in my individual role, if I'm working against my strengths, there's no amount of that that's going to make a difference. Same with
Yeah. Well,
salary.
and I think it also breeds cynicism sometimes. People are smart enough to understand when they're being fed bread and circuses and real problems aren't getting addressed. So it's like, oh, great. We spent time and money to get together for a happy hour, but I still am not being judged fairly on what I'm doing, or
Mhm.
my boss still hasn't told me what the expectations are so that when I'm, come up short, I don't know how to fix it. And one of the key things that they talked about in the survey is opportunity to do what people do best. I mean,
That's
that's
right.
right in our wheelhouse. That's conation right there. It's not, you know, and yes, you're right. It's three parts of the mind, and especially their cognitive. There's definitely part of that. You have that cognitive ability in an area, you want to use that, but also with your conative strengths. When people understand that that's a key part to doing your job well and gaining satisfaction from it, it's fixable. It doesn't need to be a mystery that just never gets addressed. And
Yeah.
so the article talked about, well, what are some of the things to do? I mean, it really focused more just on the trends and what they're seeing. But it touched a little bit on what to do. And it was interesting to me. One of the things and probably one of the chief recommendations was, leaders need to have conversations with all of their people, like 15 to 30 minutes a week to talk about their jobs. Well, but what about their jobs?
Sure.
And that's one of the things that I think Kolbe's so helpful with is we help people target so that it's not just talk to them on Monday and how was your weekend? And don't get me wrong, some of that again is important culturally. People do need to feel like if you've got a sick kid at home, my boss asked me how my sick kid is doing. That's just, connecting on a human level.
Sure.
But in
Yeah.
terms of the work stuff, we can say, you can look at a person's Kolbe index result and say, oh, so how are you getting to use that fact finder strength that you have? You can look at, and there are all kinds of specific things. So you start with individual strengths, then you can look at how does your result fit with your job expectations,
Uh-huh.
your own job expectations. Then you can look at the boss and the person in the job and see if they are well aligned. Then you can look at key one-to-one relationships and up from there, then onto the team and all that stuff. So,
Sure.
there are specific topics that you can discuss that are productive, that are going to get at the root issues.
So maybe we can even give a key question for everybody. One of the things that's just so simple and straightforward is ask someone, how have you gotten to use your strengths this week? Or what is the one task that you either keep putting off or is causing you the most stress? Or there are some really basic questions. If you haven't had those conversations with people
Yeah.
this week, try those out because it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So that's the question. For instance, what is the one task? Follow it up. When you get the answer, it's not just so that you hear
Mhm.
the answer, it's then, well, what do you do about it? So what are the techniques? Is it, and you got to listen. Is that something that somebody else should be doing because it's just never going to be a good fit for you and the organization would be better served? More than likely though, hey, it is part of your job. So what are the techniques for handling it? Hey, tackle that first thing in the day when you still have energy. Only do it for a limited chunk of time so that you aren't dreading it so much because it's an entire day of something that's really going to stress you out. So get to those solutions too. That's got to be part of the conversation.
Yeah. And for any leaders that are listening right now, it's key to let you know it's not massive changes. So we're not talking about having to change everything about someone's role.
Yep.
People will tell me if they just do one task that causes them stress just a little bit differently or reduce the amount of time they work against their grain, even by 10 or 20%, that makes a big difference in how
Yep.
satisfied someone is. And then, ultimately, one of the things I liked about the survey was one of the 5 things they said was that people wanted to feel cared for at work, right? I want someone who actually cares about me. If you can show I really care about whether or not you're in a role that works for you, I care about discovering more about your strengths and making sure you get to use those, that's a part of the whole picture. So, of course, there's the other things like understanding what's going on in your personal life, and I care about you as a person, but this one component makes a huge difference and it changes results. You actually can get to some solutions. So I think that's huge.
Great. Well, I think that's enough. I'm an Aiden fact finder. I could keep going on, but we'll
Yeah.
just cut it there. Thanks
Right.
for listening. And Amy, great to do the twofer with you today.
Great. And let me just remind everybody, if you need more information on any of these solutions, first of all, we talked about the Kolbe system overall, but just remember that the Kolbe system will help you with 4 different things. First, helping identify strengths. Secondly, is making sure that those people get to use their strengths. Is their alignment, like David was talking about quite a bit. And then there's the piece about working with other people and collaboration. Sometimes the people you work with are the ones that are stressing you out the most, or a team that's just kind of not getting enough done and they're spinning their wheels. We have measures for that to see what team dynamics are at play and some solutions. And then lastly is as you're adding to the team, adding to people, we have solutions for that too. And of course, you can get more of that information at Kolbe.com.
Yep. Thanks for the pitch.
Of course. Thanks,
All right.
David.
We'll see y'all later.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Powered by Instinct. This show is brought to you by Kolbe Corp, a company that helps leaders and organizations thrive using the only instinctive strengths assessment on the market. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Powered by Instinct wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or join us online at kolbe.com/podcast for all the latest episodes.